Time travel has always been a rather complicated subject in the Legend of Zelda series. It takes a good amount of understanding and in most cases deep creativity for it to really make sense. The concept of time travel has really begun to be more creative with recent media, and while some franchises keep it consistent, the Zelda series does not. While crazy time travel shenanigans take place across most of the Zelda series, we haven't seen really any of it in the recent blockbuster Breath of the Wild. So if it isn't in Breath of the Wild, how could it take shape in the newly announced Tears of the Kingdom? Well, a Hyrule Warriors spin-off of Breath of the Wild provides time travel in the form of an alternate timeline, changing the events of what happened. Discussion of this spin-off, Age of Calamity, has caused debate among the community of its canonicity, and to be frank, I am a believer of its canonicity to Breath of the Wild and the Zelda series. So how is it canon, one might ask? Well, I think this will be revealed in Tears of the Kingdom in a way you guys would not expect. So, some of you might be thinking, if Tears of the Kingdom is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, how could Age of Calamity, which is in a different timeline, connect to it? Unless I'm implying that Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel to Age of Calamity and not Breath of the Wild. Well, while that would be a cool video to make and could be possible, that's not what I'm going for. Instead, I believe the lack of something or someone will serve as a unique connection. Let's jump back to Age of Calamity so I can explain what the time travel indicates. We learned in Age of Calamity, Terraco is going back in time, and it caused the events of 100 years ago to be altered, bringing Malice earlier, Astor rising to power, blah blah. Most notably though, the champions were saved from defeat unexpectedly by their successors from the future, when we expected them to not be saved. Now, the successors came from the future of the main Breath of the Wild timeline, meaning that they were ripped out of that timeline. But it's not that simple to understand. You see, Terraco traveled from the point of Link's fall 100 years before Breath of the Wild, so at that point the champion successors were either young, not born, or not as skilled yet as we see them in Age of Calamity. So it must be assumed that they were pulled from a time period that's in the future from the point of right before Terraco went back. We then see from dialogue boxes during the Blight fights that the successors are aware of Link and the good deeds he fulfilled in Breath of the Wild. So it's pretty safe and accurate to assume that the successors are pulled from after Link saved the Divine Beast, and likely even after stopping Calamity Ganon. As crazy as this sounds, we were given some light to how the successors went back in time thanks to Sidon's explanation in this clip.
When it happened, I could faintly hear a voice calling to me. As I searched for who it was, I suddenly saw my dear sister under attack.
Now this is pivotal to the theory. Let me explain. From this clip, it's pretty clear a visible portal appeared to Sidon while he was in his timeline, as well as what he saw, what was within the portal, which was Mipha in trouble. He also heard a voice that was either Mipha's or another's. It's not clear on who that voice is, but it did encourage him to go into the portal. He also went in by decision, that's important. And of course, this was probably the same case with the other three successors. I believe their portals to the past were similar to Terraco's in the beginning cutscene. Now, time portals that one walks/jumps into in the Zelda series are interesting. Usually, I'm under the impression specific gates and doors from time travel remain in place when traveling back and forth, as well as keeping their time periods intact and unaffected by changes. So when there is a change in the past, it can be assumed that the original future before the change remains intact when traveling through a specific door/portal. My reasoning for this comes from Skyward Sword's ending time travel paradox. While that topic itself can be turned into its own video, which I will make at a later time, there is something people tend to overlook. This has to do with alternate timelines, and it gets deep. To summarize Skyward Sword's ending, Link lays the Master Sword to rest in the pedestal in the past, right after beating Demise, and this change of defeating Demise earlier in the past is unaffected when Link, Zelda, and Groose return to their own time period. Or so we thought. You see, the Master Sword appears in its pedestal in the present time period, when it wasn't ever there before. Because remember, Link put the Master Sword in the pedestal in the past. Thus, there was a change. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe, to put it shortly, that it's a third timeline. There's the timeline where most of Skyward Sword happens, the present, the timeline where Demise is awakened by Girahim and then was immediately defeated by Link after, which is the past, and finally a timeline that has everything that happened in Skyward Sword's present, along with the Master Sword in the pedestal since it was put in the pedestal from the past. So it's kind of like a not really like a mix, but it's more like of a Demise defeated twice timeline, even though the people in the present don't really recognize it. It's kind of confusing, but I'm just going to call it a Demise defeated twice timeline, I can infer. So I believe this to be the same with the events after Age of Calamity. The Successors' departure back to the future in Age of Calamity is one that seems pretty clear to the audience. It can safely be assumed that when they return to their own timelines, that everything is, back to the way it was in Breath of the Wild. But I don't think so. Just like with what I mentioned for Skyward Sword's new timeline being created from altering the past, I believe the Successors returned to an alternate timeline. One where Sidon will really discover that him and his sister's hearts are closer than he thought. What do I mean by this? Here's the bold claim. The Successors, Yunobu, Teba, Riju, and Sidon return to an alternate future where the Calamity was stopped much prior and the champions were never defeated. The champions and Successors will live together with each other in their own time. A third timeline, separate from both Age of Calamities and Breath of the Wilds. The comment section will be raging. Well, one more piece of in-game support for this claim, guys. When the Successors were sent back, Tarika was at a weakened state, a much weaker state. The dude was just a piece, a screw. So there could also be a lack of control in timeline tagging, meaning difficulty in delivering the Successors back to their own time. And of course, to wrap up, this means the champion Successors will not return in Tears of the Kingdom. They will have disappeared and the game will probably focus on new characters. I'll say it again, in Tears of the Kingdom, no Sidon, no Yunobu, no Riju, no Teba. Wow, this was a big one. What do you guys think? Crazy, right? I know a lot of people won't be happy about this and will disagree and argue like crazy. But hey, I love debating Zelda, so go ahead. There's a lot to unpack in this theory, so leave a question, comment, concern, praise, rant, whatever you want below in the comment section. This is Skylink Shock, and have a great and blessed day, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to like and subscribe. I got more projects on the way. Thank you.